In your most recent blog, you described this girl at the grocery store who was very sad, and then you note other people like Amazon drivers, and just lots of people are depressed now. Do you think that's a new phenomenon, that people today are more depressed, more sad, feel more worthless than at other points in history?
I think it is. I'm 61 years old, and when I was younger and a young adult, a young priest, middle-aged priest, people generally had a bounce to their step and looked you in the eye and smiled, genuinely smiled, instead of the Walmart greeter smile. And now we don't see that very much. There's a palpable loss of energy and engagement among people these days. I have to say, this morning we did a field trip with our school children to the Presidio Cemetery here in San Francisco, both for Veterans Day and for the month of November, to pray the rosary for the souls of the military uh, deceased. And we passed a lot of people, so about 25, 30 students in their Catholic school uniforms praying the rosary. And people lit up as we passed by. They love to see children in Catholic school uniforms praying the rosary with their priest. So I think happiness and engagement aren't that far away, but it needs to be engaged and evoked. The default position for most people these days is sadness and non-engagement with the outside world.
Yeah, I see that too to a certain extent, but I do wonder if part of it's being in San Francisco. Honestly, I mean, I don't know how much time you spend outside of San Francisco these days, but when I go to San Francisco, it does seem very depressed
It
compared to
is.
other places.
That's true. That's true. So a lot of what I read in my blog is a reflection of the culture of this particular city at this time in history. But San Francisco also is a kind of a template of what other cities think they want to be. And in that sense, it's a kind of a warning to the rest of the world that if you want the kind of culture that San Francisco prides itself in, this is what it looks like. I had a friend, a priest. I have a priest friend that worked in Russia for many years. I mean, he still works there. And he said, in Vladivostok, and he said, for all of the Americans and European elites that promote socialism, I'd like to put them all on a big airplane and fly them to Vladivostok to see what socialism actually looks like on the ground. Everybody's so sad in this socialist utopia of the Soviet Union. I remember flying into Vladivostok to visit him and work in his parish a little bit. And it was such a great city, especially before the Iron Curtain fell. But it's um, people trudge along, they shuffle along the streets with their heads down. There's nothing on the skyline of cultural significance, no spires or domes. It was all gray high rises and smokestacks. And that's atheistic communism. That's Marxism. That's what cities like San Francisco think they want. And so part of my blog is to say, well, this is actually what it looks like when you live here. Now, San Francisco is a very beautiful city, and there's much to recommend it. I don't mean to be disrespectful of the city or the people that live here, but to the extent that we embrace atheistic Marxism or secularism, we're making a mistake. And I'd like to portray that to people in the blog.
Mm-hmm. Well, then that brings me, is it both of them together? You say atheistic Marxism, or is it more the atheism? I mean, not that people would be truly happy under Marxism, but I mean part of the atheist, like, could we atheists in a capitalist society, would they be just as unhappy as Marxists? Is that, should we be bringing God to them, or how do we bring God to them if that's the problem?
disclaimer, I'm not a political scientist and not particularly educated in these things. I have a personal animus towards Marxism because my father identified as a Marxist most of his life, and I I've I was an English major, and there were a lot of so-called Marxists among my classmates and colleagues. So what I describe as Marxism isn't perhaps precise, but Marxism, as I understand it, is a materialistic philosophy that's incompatible with Christianity and therefore atheist by definition. So maybe atheist Marxism is a redundancy, but any kind of approach to ordering our lives together that doesn't take account of a higher power, a higher authority, will always end badly. And a lot of people describe, I mean, the BLM movement, for example, Black Lives Matter, openly claimed to be Marxist. Whether they were Marxist in the strict sense, I'm not sure, but a lot of people claim to be Marxists. I mean, the people in China are really capitalist. The Communist Party is capitalist, but it claims to be Marxist. And Marxist in certain ways, certainly by its rejection of religion, but so back to your question, would atheistic capitalism be any better off? Probably not. Certainly the social teaching of the church indicates that bottom line capitalism is as harmful to the human race as is so-called Marxism. I guess what I'm saying is the atheism, and it's hard to be atheist, I think. Everybody believes in something. But the secularism, let's say, where the focus is on human ingenuity and human intelligence rather than receiving intellect as a gift and receiving reality as a gift from God. So we make our own reality. There's a billboard just up the street. It used to be a billboard where I live. It showed an androgynous figure, scowling, angry, and piercings, tattoos, and the words written under it were, "We make today." And the sponsor was, I think it was Twitter, or no, it was Instagram. So advertising Instagram as we, that anonymous we, kind of like we are legion. What does we mean? It's undefined. We make today, I think, sums up the approach of so many in our secular cities, that we define our own reality because we have the technology and the money to do it. And that's our religion, that we define our own reality every moment.
I've seen that a lot too. Just people, we try to explain morality to people or defend the church's teaching on morality, but people don't even know what it means for something to be true anymore. So when you're saying people define their own reality, I talk to people who can't understand what it means for something to be true. So I don't know if that's the same thing what you're talking about, or if it is, how do we combat that?
Right. There's no sense of a reality and an anchored reality, and anchored anything but my own opinions or my own desires. Well, it comes down to whether we believe in a higher power, whether we submit ourselves to a reality that's greater than ourselves. And that takes a certain humility. So that ultimately, when you talk with somebody who doesn't believe in any truth but their own, or doesn't believe in truth at all, it's an act of the will. It's not an act of the intellect. The will has to submit to a higher authority, a will that's different than its own passions. And we've been trained to expect to receive what we want, to have absolute free choice, which of course is irrational. No society can exist with everybody getting whatever they want because those desires will collide. But unthinkingly, many people today assume that the highest good is free choice, is to feed my passions at every moment. And that's an act of the will. It's not an intellectual assent, because first of all, it's irrational and it doesn't work socially, but also, even for an individual, just getting what your passions desired every moment destroys you, as anybody who has been addicted to a substance or a behavior will tell you. So I think it comes down, it is morality. It's not intellect. It's not an intellectual question. It's, do I will to submit myself to a higher power or not? So you can't argue this thing out logically. It doesn't work rationally.
So if someone had the same experience you did and ran into a similar sales clerk,
Mm-hmm.
you were saying you wished you had said, God bless you. What else, just on a practical level, what would be something that someone could do on a practical level to help combat this attitude of people feeling worthless?
Well, a smile, as Mother Teresa always said, a genuine smile goes a long way. So she said the big problem today is children get home and there's no one to smile at them. Mom and dad are out working or doing something else, and no one engages them with that look of, I value your presence, I value your reality, your existence. So I think the first thing is to engage the other person. I've made a commitment to say hello to at least one perfect stranger every day on the streets of San Francisco. And usually people respond. Now, sometimes once in a while, they feel threatened. Like, why is this person saying hello to me this morning and looking at me in the eye? A lot of people don't hear it because they've got earphones in and a face mask and sunglasses and a hat pulled down over their head.
Yep.
But most people generally receive that well, and they smile back and they say, good morning, how are you doing? So I think it's that personal engagement, that smile, that it's not, words are cheap. So if I said God bless you, but I didn't look at that person with love, then it wouldn't mean anything. So no matter what words you use, I think mentioning the word God is important. Now, it might be offensive or incomprehensible to some people who are raised in, awash in atheism from their infancy. So maybe saying God bless you wouldn't work in some situations, but a smile, a genuine look of understanding love, again, is Mother Teresa's term. The poor need understanding love that understands and makes the attempt to understand them. That always hits the mark, or almost always hits the mark. So I think that's the one thing we want to do with each other in a time of sadness, is just to look with understanding love at a person.